Good morning, folks. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson here in the TV9 newsroom, giving you a first alert to the potential for some severe weather over the next couple of days, especially on Tuesday. But we're not fully out of the woods yet over the next 24 hours either, as we could see some storms develop between now and then. It could be a fairly active couple of days here across eastern Iowa, one of the bigger severe weather threats perhaps we faced so far this season in the TV9 viewing area. So let's dive into it. We'll start with a wide view of radar here on pinpoint Doppler radar, and I'll actually pause it for just a second, kind of show you the feature in the weather flow that we're watching this morning. It's an area of mid-level disturbance that's kind of resulting in the radar showing some curvature here, some counterclockwise spin to the rain as it moves to the northeast. You can kind of pick that up. It's a little bit vague, but it is there, and that is the possibility of more rain and storms as it passes to the northeast. Dubuque getting involved on some of that at this point. We'll pinpoint them just briefly to show you what's moving through the key city at this point, but very short-lived too. Heavier downpour, lots of lightning, but it will be out of the area soon. View from our city cam in Dubuque shows the storms that are moving through, and this hasn't been an uncommon sight so far this morning, and it will likely be a more common sight as we go over the next couple of days. Latest severe weather outlooks from the Storm Prediction Center of today and tomorrow. The one for today really does feature areas that are favored for, or at least included in a risk for severe weather as we head toward tonight. And that will be primarily areas off to our northwest zone. You see that here in yellow across the area. A little bit of an area of damaging wind risk that will be moving through. Then Tuesday, of course, the somewhat higher risk as we have been talking about. This is the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. It hasn't changed all that much from this morning. If you joined us on the TV9 morning news, it does include areas like Waterloo, Tama, down toward Grinnell, as well as Marshalltown and areas to the northwest. Storms developing tonight provide that risk for damaging wind, an isolated tornado, and large hail. You see that individual threat here, again, primarily damaging wind and that large hail risk. The tornado risk is lower across eastern Iowa, but it's also not non-existent. So we'll be watching that as these storms move through. They'd be more in the form of embedded, brief spin-up tornadoes within a line of storms as they pass by. So pinpoint futurecast over the next couple of hours. By 10 o'clock, we're expecting things to be still wet near the Mississippi River region, but areas to the west of that should be starting to dry out as this storm system that's providing this morning activity begins to move on. So by this afternoon, some clear skies possible. Now, normally you'd start to get concerned about the potential for storm redevelopment because of that clearing sky. We can't fully rule it out this afternoon either. The area that would be most concerned about for some of that redevelopment then would generally be central and south. You see that uptick in cloud cover toward that area by later this evening. Most of it stays pretty dry here in eastern Iowa according to Pinpoint Futurecast. But again, that chance is there as we head toward the evening. It will just be somewhat hard to come by. The better risk arrives later tonight. Notice by about 10 o'clock, storms have already developed in central and northwest Iowa, and they will slide to the southeast. Similar fashion to what we saw last night, providing the opportunity for more stormy times during the nighttime hours, as well as the opportunity for some strong to severe storms. As they move further east, they'll likely lose a little bit of punch, but we can't fully rule out a few severe thunderstorm warnings as they do. Another wet start to the work commute possible again on Tuesday. Now, we will likely catch a bit of a break during the morning hours and afternoon of Tuesday before the severe weather threat ramps up again later in the afternoon. This is the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. Looks very similar to what you may have seen yesterday from meteorologist Hannah Messier, highlighting the risk for severe weather. Damaging winds, tornadoes, and large hail all possible on Tuesday, and that risk a little bit higher on the scale here in eastern Iowa, what's called an enhanced risk in the Storm Prediction Center's terminology. The threats highest for high wind and tornadoes. You notice those dashed lines here for the tornado threat and the high wind threat. That means that the potential for especially strong incidences of those particular threats is out there. Winds that would be in excess of 70 miles per hour, or a tornado that would be stronger, in this case defined as an EF2 or greater. Certainly not out of the question given the ingredients that we have in place for the day on Tuesday. So it is a pretty volatile atmosphere that's likely to develop, though it will depend somewhat on what takes place tonight. We would have a little bit higher certainty about the absolute outcome on Tuesday if we already knew exactly what's going to happen tonight, but sometimes things play out a little bit differently, and that can certainly affect the possibility of severe weather on Tuesday. Right now, it does appear that we'll catch a bit of a break during the morning on Tuesday, although some scattered storms could linger around eastern Iowa too. Now, these will be occurring in an atmosphere that will be conducive to strong to severe weather. And so we will be watching for that possibility early. If they stay in these little clusters, large hail damage and wind a possibility, though the tornado threat tends to increase as we go later in the day. That's when we notice here at about 2 o'clock on Pinpoint Futurecast, showers and storms lining up here in western Iowa right near a cold front that will be entering the state during that time. As it makes further progress to the east by about 4 or 5 o'clock, entering our western counties, likely either in the form of some shorter segments of lines or perhaps some individual storms. Those individual storms would have the somewhat higher risk for stronger to severe storms in terms of those that could produce large hail or tornadoes. Lines, of course, would be a little bit more likely to produce damaging wind. And if they do get into a really organized complex of storms, we could see that damaging wind threat increase even a little bit more. Now, these will be tracking to the northeast or east at about 50 to 60 miles per hour. So that's going to be one key to remember on Tuesday. Less time to react than normal, perhaps. And so we really want you to stay with us and stay weather aware during the afternoon and evening on Tuesday as this cold front sweeps through. Now, as it does, we'll see an end to the threat for additional storms. So by 6 or 7 o'clock, that could already be clearing the Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area as storms progress to the east. And they'll continue to track to the east from there. By later in the evening, though, drier weather here in eastern Iowa. Still some clouds, still some pretty good westerly winds, but those westerly winds that eventually shift a bit northwesterly actually bring us drier and quieter conditions for your Wednesday. We'll just have all the ingredients in place for severe weather on Tuesday in particular. Wind shear, so change of wind speed and direction with height. We're going to have winds increasing at the surface from a southerly or slightly southeasterly direction, just off the surface, a little bit more southwesterly in terms of those wind speeds, and they remain strong through a good portion of the atmosphere. So we'll just have that energy based on those wind speeds too. A good source of lift, that area of low pressure, which will be strengthening tomorrow, as well as the cold front cutting across an unstable atmosphere. Warm temperatures, high humidity levels will contribute to that instability. And yes, moisture will be up too. If you're not feeling the humidity this morning, you'll likely feel it again by tomorrow. Muggier set of conditions by then. We've already seen a decent amount of rainfall over the last 24 hours. Many areas checking in with at least half an inch of rain and some seeing significantly more than that. And so we are expecting more to come with these shower and storm rounds over the next couple of days. 1 to 2 inches of rain not out of the question as we look north of Highway 30 with repeated rounds of activity possible. That would certainly add on top and would pretty much solidify we're going to finish May above normal for precipitation in most cases. So yeah, it's been a fairly wet start to the day. Yeah. Pretty active too. Severe weather safety, of course, recall that during a warning, we want you to head indoors. Make sure to stay inside, away from windows in an interior room. Cover yourself with blankets, pillows, especially in a tornado warning to help keep yourself safe. And stay there till the threat is passed. When the warning expires, things will be A-OK by then. And then make sure to get updates. KCRG TV9, KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app are streaming, which you can access on your smartphone through the apps or on our website, kcrg.com. Also gets you connected to the Weather Lab if you're away from your television. If you're on the go, if you find yourself out and about tomorrow and storms threaten your area, try to get inside. Sturdy building would be best, helping to keep you safe. If not, then you could stay in an area that will help keep you safe. That's not under an overpass or a bridge. In fact, in a tornado, you're safer in a low and flat area. Get as low as you can, cover your head and neck. Watch out for flying debris in general, and just, of course, do whatever you can to stay safe. Again, the best advice is a substantial structure. Get away from mobile homes, any sort of big, broad roof buildings like what are called big box stores, right? Those big department stores aren't particularly safe either, so something to avoid if you're looking for shelter. And to keep yourself safe, you stick with us. That's the best advice I can offer. KCRG.com, KCRG TV9 First Alert weather apps. Weather Call Next Gen is available on KCRG.com. It's a subscription service where you can get direct phone calls and text messages to your phone. Another way to just kind of really get your attention, grab a hold of you, and get you that information. We live stream, of course, on our KCRG TV9 YouTube channel, as well as KCRG.com too. So we do have that to go with it. And a weather radio, still strongly advised as another way to keep you safe. Certainly will wake you up in the event of some severe weather. So yeah, it could be a pretty rocky start to the week. Now, of course, the way that we always say is better to be prepared than scared, and that is one way to keep yourself safe, is to sort of know what to do, know what's coming, and know what's facing us here in eastern Iowa over the next 24 to 36 hours. And yeah, it could be a little bit bad at times in some communities. We've already seen some minor damage in Butler County this morning from storms overnight. We can't rule out some more incidences of that going forward too. So please just sort of stay weather aware during this time. We'll recap here our threat for severe weather as we look toward Tuesday in particular. The 2-day view here will show the potential for severe weather increasing as we head toward Tuesday. Still can't rule it out today. Slight risk for our northwest zone in particular. And then we have most of the rest of the area not included in that particular risk area, but also a very, very slim risk that some of these storms overnight could turn severe. It's Tuesday, though, that we're really keeping an eye on. The best risk for severe weather tonight, still in our northwest zone and points to the west. That's where those storms develop. A few stronger wind gusts possible in those areas as they move through. Large hail and an isolated tornado not fully ruled out either. You see that here on the map of individual threats, but higher on the scale for the high wind and large hail threat. Now, remember these colors, remember these threats for today when we look at tomorrow, just so you can keep that in mind in terms of the relative potential between these 2 days. Pinpoint futurecast, showers and storms this morning will finally start to move out as we head toward the latter portion of the morning into the afternoon hours at the very latest. It looks like our thunderstorm risk decreases within the next hour or so, and then the rain risk does too after that. Now, we'll catch a break this afternoon. Some sunshine possible too. We'll get a little bit on the warm side, 70s, 80s again likely today and tomorrow, both days. We'll see moisture start to increase a little bit too, which is going to contribute to this thunderstorm potential. Now this afternoon and evening, we can't rule out a few pop-up thunderstorms across eastern Iowa, but it still looks like the more widespread activity stays to our west. Those storms moving in after about midnight to our northwest zone and spreading to the southeast from there. Similar sort of stuff to what we saw overnight last night. Some severe thunderstorms possible, some damage in wind, probably the main threat as these storms move through. Lots of lightning too, so be ready for that. We saw plenty of that overnight. Woke up a lot of folks as these storms move by. Notice by 3 o'clock, still seeing those storms sliding to the southeast. And by 7 o'clock, as more folks are getting up for the day, those storms starting to push toward the Iowa-Illinois border. That's when the severe weather threat increases on Tuesday. More rounds of storms likely as we head through the day, probably multiple rounds in some spots. There could be a repeated round of activity, especially the farther north you go, north of a warm front. We could see some additional rounds develop and spread near that front. Okay, now remember where we were on our outlook for today for severe weather. These colors, higher on the scale in almost every case. Heavy rain is the one that really doesn't show a lot of change between today and tomorrow, as storms will be moving, and so the flash flooding threat will be relatively low. High wind, large hail, tornadoes, all on the board for Tuesday. High wind and tornadoes, the more substantial threat of the three in terms of potentially producing some particularly intense outcomes with those threats. Pinpoint Futurecast shows the storm activity potential through the day. It's going to be a fairly slim chance in the morning. We will likely catch a bit of a break, but that possibility is still there. And if storms develop, they'll still be in an atmosphere that will be conducive to severe weather, even during the morning hours. Now notice by the afternoon, I'm going to kind of highlight here where there may be a bit of a warm front that sets up as we go through the afternoon. Notice that those winds shift just ever so slightly to a bit more of a southeasterly direction north of it. And then we have that cold front coming in behind it. And so where those two meet up and points to the southeast is where the highest risks for severe weather will be as we go through the day. That warm front continues to lift to the north a little bit as the system passes to the east. Out ahead of it, showers and storms looking like a pretty good bet by later in the afternoon to the evening. Now, if they develop into line segments, a little bit higher risk of damage in wind. If they stay individual cells, a little bit higher risk of some tornadic activity as we head toward the evening. So we'll have to watch the evolution of that. Even if they do develop into the lines, the winds in the atmosphere actually will be somewhat favorable that we could see those embedded tornadoes within lines. So certainly we'll want to treat storms with respect tomorrow. If a warning is issued for your area, make sure to seek shelter. Notice by 6 o'clock, stretching from about north to south across the area. By 7 o'clock, spreading farther northeast than that, but they'll continue to pass through the area at a pretty quick clip, about 50 to 60 miles per hour to the northeast. So you really won't have a lot of time to react to these warnings, but the good news is that does mean they will move pretty quickly and get out of the area too. As we head toward tomorrow night, drier conditions expected, which is good news to see there as well. We will have the possibility of seeing some heavier rain with these storms. 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, not out of the question for areas, especially north of Highway 30. Most likely to see some of those repeated rounds, a little bit lighter to the south as we head through the next 12 to 24 hours. So yeah, just stick with us here on KCRG.com's live stream, as well as the KCRG TV9 YouTube channel, the KCRG TV9 News app, the KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app. Also a great one. Make sure to turn on those notifications to help keep you safe over the next couple of days. We will, of course, have all the updates here as we can. Probably more discussions of these threats as we get into that time period and closer to tomorrow. Thanks for joining me this morning. Hope you have a great day. And again, just stay weather aware over the next 24 to 48 hours.